I appreciate your words. Pass the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Trevino, you've heard the concerns of the department. You're aware of what facts led to this removal, but also of the history with CPS through family-based safety services or actual conservatorship through removals. So what is it that has happened and you're doing differently in this case right now to just
My kids. That's what I'm doing.
also
I'm
no.
choosing my kids. I'm choosing my kids over anything. I'm doing everything and going above and beyond to fight for them and continue fighting for them. That's what I'm doing for my kids. I'm not going to give up on them.
And so
because I can be a better parent. I know I can. And I can't prove that until I get my kids home.
what has your visitation been like? Is it always in the controlled one room environment or
Yeah, we never get to go anywhere. We never do anything, and it's only an hour, so we really don't have much time to do nothing. I try to bring games and stuff and interact with them. Like I had brought those little palette things and some paint for Joe to do his handprints and stuff. Like I try to think of things to do, but it's not very easy because we have to stay at that place. We can't meet at Chuck E. Cheese, or I can't take them nowhere else. I never had any unsupervised visits. I never had no overnights. I never had nothing. Like it's just straight up just 1 hour. And the only time I had 2 hours is whenever they had to reschedule or something happened. So they would give me like 2 hours on 1 week. But other than that, we ain't had much time to really spend together.
do you feel like your kids have a good bond with you?
Yeah, they do. They do. The only time my kids get mad at me is if I get on to them and I tell them, no, don't be doing that. And I always correctly Sienna in the visits. When she says something wrong, I correct. And Clarissa was trying to say that I was talking inappropriately. My daughter tries cussing and tries saying bad stuff, and I tell her no, to stop talking like that. When she talks about boys, I tell her stop talking about boys, and I never told her what's the flavor of the week today. I never said that. That never came out of my mouth.
But if in the past you did allow her to talk about relationships and didn't at the time redirect her, you understand now what's appropriate. She should be
Yes,
focused on school, right?
in the beginning, but after that, after they told us about that, I stopped her and I told her, I said no to conversations about boys. I don't want to hear nothing about boys. And she's like, oh well, he's just my friend. I don't hear nothing about boys at all. Talk about your girlfriends, talk about your grades, talk about other things, not about boys. So I have been correcting her since they said that.
And you've been working, you've maintained a home suitable to bring the children to. Krista has been able to see that. The home
Yes, every month she comes and sees the house. She sees the rooms, everything.
Now, you understand, obviously, and it has been said multiple times that Harmony is scared to come back home. What would you do? What would you acknowledge to try to work through that with her? What is it that you want to come across in trying to reunify with your kids?
I mean, prove it to them. That's all I do is try to prove it to them and show them.
And if it,
Saying,
go ahead, I couldn't hear you.
saying is different than doing. I understand that. But it's the same thing about faith. You can have faith and stuff like that, and you don't see it. You don't see it happening. You don't see it. You don't see nothing working out or anything like that. But you have to just believe it. You have to believe it. And the only thing I can do is try to get my kids to believe that I'm gonna be good and I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do as a mom, take care of them and keep them safe and make sure they're happy. And I can't do that until I can show them.
And in therapy, it sounds as if both of your daughters verbalize that they find problematic the men you've chosen in the past. What is different going forward?
I have to choose right from now on. I can't choose bad people, bad guys. I have to make the right decisions for my kids.
Would that include remaining single and just focusing on parenting your children?
Yes, that's what I plan to do.
As for discipline, of course, it was alleged that you left one of the children in a car seat and he wasn't able to get out of it, and maybe that's caused some behavioral issues. Do you understand appropriate discipline now? I mean, there was an earlier reference to a belt in the face from the last case or case before. What have
Yes.
you learned about discipline that you can tell this court? What's appropriate?
I try sitting my kids down and talking to them and asking them what's wrong and if they can talk to me, or what made them angry, what made them mad. I learned in therapy with Claudia. She made like this little engine plate, and if you're in blue, you're sad or upset or kind of down, depressed. But if you're on green, you're good, you're happy. And then on red, you're mad, you're angry, and stuff like that. So we learned that. So I was planning on making one of my kids one of those and seeing how that worked for them, to try to teach them about that. And like I said, the only thing I would possibly do was tell them, hey, go stand in the corner for a couple minutes and understand why you're in trouble, explain to them why they got in trouble and stuff like that. But no, I'm not going to spank my kids. And the whole car seat thing, I didn't strap my son into the car seat. We had two car seats that were exactly the same. And his dad would use one when he'd pick him up, and the other one would stay in my car. So I had that one car seat right there by the front door all the time, because when his dad would come, he'd pick it up. So baby Eddie would move the car seat and sit it in front of the TV, and he'd sit there. And then there's times when he'd strap himself in the car seat. So me putting him in the car seat and strapping him up and trying to tie him up and all those things that are being said, no, that did not happen. And Jonah, he was in one of the ones with the handles. So when we'd come home, if he was asleep, we'd let him sit there in the car seat. It was a little one that rocked. He'd sit there and we'd let him wake up. Instead of waking him up, we'd let him sleep. And once he woke up, we'd get him out and we'd let him play or whatever, or put him in his bouncer or his chair, or put him, in his high chair and feed him something. That's what we would do. So it was never nothing to hurt them or to tie them down or nothing like that.
But so, as where we are today during this trial, what can you say you've learned about discipline for, say, the ones that won't talk through? I mean, two of them are very young. One of them has severe behavioral issues and has had to be removed from his foster, at least temporarily, to address these issues. What can you do to address to this court that you could appropriately parent the younger two, for example?
The main thing would just be sitting them down and talking to them. And I know I'm not Pam, but Harmony did mention that she'll take them to the other room and she'll sit them down and let them calm down and stuff. So I have ways of doing things. I'm not gonna just go out and just start spanking them or nothing like that, or start yelling at them or anything. I've noticed I have more patience, like now that I go to the visits and stuff. Like if Jonah gets over hyper, I'm like, hey, you're being too hyper. Let's calm down. Let's sit down for a minute. I was like, I do give them candy, but not that much candy. I limit what I give them. I do bring food. I do bring healthy things too. But as me not being able to see them, of course, I'm going to give them, treats and stuff here and there. But I will be more patient. I will be, like talking to them more and stuff like that, and see what's going on and why they're upset, and let them know why they're in trouble and stuff like that. And if it gets really, 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 really bad, I mean, I can try the whole corner thing, but if it doesn't work, then I just have to sit there until they calm down. That's the only option I have. I still do want to continue therapy and counseling with them if that's going to help, or if they do have a behavioral place for baby Eddie where he can go see somebody once a week or however they think he needs, how much time they think he needs, then I'm willing to do that also. Because I know he's very, very hyper. So
And are you committed to working through the issues that your children have with the choices from the past and the things that you have done or the people you chose before to work toward a better future?
yeah, I'm wanting to do whatever I have to do.
What was it like hearing your own child tell you she wants to be adopted?
It hurt. I cried. It hurt, and it still does hurt. But I can't change how she feels.
And in the last notes that I have from January 20th, so 10 days ago, you're in therapy with the kids and you were expressing to Luciana how the elders who do not need to be parents, they need to focus on being kids. That's new for you, right? You've taken.
Yeah. Yes, I straight up told my kids, like, you're not, because Harmony will still try to do it. She'll be like, "Oh, I got it, mom. No, you don't need to get it. I'm his mom. I can get it. I can do it. I don't need your help. I appreciate it, but I don't need your help." I was like, "I'm gonna do this on my own." And so they're getting used to it now. And I think it was this last visit, Jonah needed help putting on his jacket, and he was telling Harmony, and I said, "No, come here." I said, "Tell mommy to help you. I'll help you." And so he came to Harmony again, and Harmony was like, "No, no, Jonah, I'm not your mom. Go ask mommy." And so I was like, "Thank you for that. Like, thank you for telling him to come to me, because it's not your responsibility, it's mine." So he came to me, like, okay. So he walks over, "Mommy, can you help me?" So I helped him, and like, so they know that's what I'm doing, and that's what I'm gonna do from here on out, that I'm not gonna expect them to do any of that.
So how would you focus, if given the chance, on rebuilding trust with Harmony, considering she's already told you multiple times she wants to stay where she is and be adopted?
um I mean, if she gets sent home, the only thing I can do is try to show her, that things are going to be okay, and she's going to be safe, and we're going to have a better environment, and you know they'll be happy and stuff.
And as to Lesiano, what do you think you can do to help her focus more on important things, school, her future, rather than dating and boys and now?
I'm just gonna have to keep getting on to her and telling her and talking to her, and if she doesn't listen, she doesn't, she's not gonna have nothing. Like I told her, you don't have a phone right now, and you want a phone when you get home, but you're not keeping up with your grades. I said, if you don't keep up with your grades, and if you don't stop getting in trouble at school, you're not gonna have a phone when you're here either, because I'm not gonna allow that, because I let them get away with too much before, and I know that's what I'm doing differently now. I'm not letting them get away with anything. I'm setting the boundaries. I'm not letting them step all over me like they used to. They want to put all the blame on me, but they liked trying to get away with everything all the time. And when they'd get in trouble, they'd be like, "Mom, what can I do to get ungrounded?" And so I would always give in. But now it's like, now I'm putting my foot down, and I'm like, "No, I'm not going to give in anymore. You're going to listen to me. You're going to do what you're supposed to do. You're going to stop getting in trouble. So I'm trying to set boundaries. I'm trying to put limitations and everything for them too. And I told my daughter, I was like, "You're too young to date. You're not going to date. I don't care what you say. You're not going to date." She's like, "Oh, well, what are you going to do when I'm at school?" I said, "Well, there's teachers and there's principals and there's everybody at school that's supposed to be watching you. So if you're getting away with stuff at school, then that means they're not doing their job, because I can't watch you at school. I can only watch you when you're with me." So I talked to her about that also, and I told her, I was like, "If you get in trouble at school, then you get in trouble. You're gonna get in trouble at home too, because I'm the one that's gonna have to tell you, hey, you did this, so you're gonna have to pay for that. You're not gonna be able to have your TV or have your phone or whatever it is that she has that she loves."
How will you pick better people to be in your children's lives in the future? If that's been a pattern of red flags and issues in the past, what would you do differently now?
Look at all the bad things that I went through and choose wisely this time. All the wrong men that I dated, all the bad things they did to me, all the abusive relationships, mentally, physically, like all the drugs, like I'm gonna look back on all that and say, look, don't choose none of that. I can't choose the same people. I have to choose somebody who's not gonna be all those things.
And why did your daughter Harmony mention that she knew how your upbringing was and thought that had an impact on how you raised them? Like, why does she think there's a pattern?
Because I explained to her how when I was young, I had to deal with my sister by myself because my mom was always out. And my mom was, at the beginning, when I was old enough, like to really like fend for myself, my mom was a bartender and she was always out. And like all the multiple relationships she's had were either alcoholics or abusive or, you know, partying, whatever. Like that's all I knew was with them partying and going out and all that and stuff. And so I told her like I've been through a lot since I was young, but instead of me doing the right thing and doing better than what my mom has done, I didn't do that. I ended up doing wrong too. And that's where I went wrong. I should have wanted better for my kids. I should have wanted to be a better mom to my kids. And that's where I made my mistakes.
And lastly, about the therapy, at the end of the longer recommendations, the therapist mentions if for some reason the children were returned home, she said it would probably be better for a gradual return one at a time to allow you to work on parenting style with each child. Do you think that that would be a good start? Do you see a benefit to starting out with, say, Lasiana and working gradually from there?
I mean, if it has to be that way, then I'm all for it. But I don't need time for them to come one at a time. I can deal with it when they all come home. If they all came home at once, I would be fine. But if it has to be that way, then that's fine too.
So lastly, before I pass the witness, what exactly are you asking for today? Obviously to not be terminated at any of the children, but what would you ask this court to do today?
I just want my kids to come home. I mean, whether it's just sending them home, case closed, or sending them home, return to monitor. But I really would like to show, what I'm doing and what I've learned to try to prove that I am a good mom. And, I've done everything they've asked me to do, even though they wanted to terminate my rights. I could have easily just said, you know what, CPS, y'all don't want to give me my kids back. And so why am I going to go drug test for you? Why am I going to continue doing counseling? Why am I going to do therapy? Like, if y'all don't want to give me my kids, they didn't even change the status. So, I could have easily just gave up and I didn't. So that should show right there. I do love my kids and I do want to try to be a better mom. Because if I didn't, I would have just given up a long time ago. But I do want my kids. I don't want my rights to be terminated. I don't want them getting adopted by anybody because those are my kids. Those aren't anybody else's kids. Those are my kids.
And if that means you remain single and focused on being a mom before everything else, that's
Yes.
what you do. No further questions. We're going to pass this witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Ms. Trevino, do you remember back a few months ago when you were informed about some of Eddie's behaviors? You remember calling him psycho baby?
That was just something that we said as a joke. It's not nothing serious.
So you understand it's not funny.
No, I mean, I thought I was saying it playfully, not to be mean to him.
And I'm hearing you say, ma'am, that you're working on some accountability and things of that nature. Are you at a point today to where you acknowledge that when you had the children, they were missing too much school?
Yes, Luciana was missing a lot of school.
Okay. And are you aware that Harmony was pretty behind academically when she was removed?
Yeah, she was having difficulties in a couple areas.
Would it surprise you to know that Harmony has seen drug use in the home, specifically your drug use in the home?
No, I have never done anything in front of them.
Okay, so if she's able to describe to me in detail what that process looks like, do you have any idea where she would have seen that?
Yeah, there's plenty of places. They had YouTube and all kinds of stuff. My kids would look up all kinds of things on there and see things on TikTok and everything else.
Okay, and when it comes to the 2019 case, do you remember ever telling us back when that case was going on that Eddie was actually outside by himself when he ate the meth?
No, I never was outside by itself. Not one time did I say that.
Okay, do you ever remember also telling us that actually he got the meth out of a trash can?
No, I never said that. A lot of things are being twisted on here. I noticed that, but no, that never came out of my mouth. I said it was by the storage.
Is it your testimony today that you understand why the girls are concerned about the men in your life?
Yes, I understand.
And do you understand why they have concerns about taking care of the younger siblings?
Yes, I understand that.
And since you're working on some of these acknowledgements, are you ready to share with us today the truth about your current relationship?
Yes, I told y'all I'm not in a relationship with him. I'm not in a relationship. Clarissa stated we could be friends. So yes, we are friends. And then she stated he told her that day when he went to court with me that day, he told her he did not want to be the reason why I did not get my kids back. And if he had to step away and move away and stop seeing me in that way, he would. And that's exactly what we did when Clarissa told me she got the background back and she said that we couldn't be in a relationship anymore, but we could still be friends. So yes, we are friends. And yes, I had feelings for him. I did have feelings for him. And those feelings aren't going to go away that fast. So yeah, I still call him babe. I still call him babe. But I call a lot of people babe. It's not even like that, you know? It's like once you get to that age, you like say those things. And as in like pictures and stuff together and stuff like that. Well, yeah, I've taken pictures with him. Yes, I care about him. I have feelings for him. But like I said, the past that he has, yeah, he did mess up. He has a bad background. But you know what? He has the worst background out of all the relationships I've been in. But you know what? He was the best one out of all of them. He wasn't ugly to me. He never laid his hands on me. He never disrespected me. He never called me names. He never put me down. He's always been very inspirational and very just straight on nice to me. And I wasn't even used to that. I actually found somebody who was good to me. But you know what? I let that go so I could get my kids back. He does not live in the home. Clarissa sees my house every month. He does not live in the home. He has not been around my kids. He doesn't go to the visits with my kids. And he's not going to harm my kids. I know that. I wanted to get to know the person he was before I brought my kids around him. I tried doing it right. And the person that he is today is not even the person he was back then. I actually can vouch for that. He's just the sweetest person ever, and I've never had that. But I let that go for my kids because I want my kids. I want to get my kids back. So yes, we're still friends, but no, we're not in a relationship. The picture y'all had of the heaters, he bought me heaters because my house on the other side of the house does not get warm. It doesn't get warm at all. So baby Eddie's room and Jonah's room and my room, I have to use the little heaters because the central air and heat does not go that way. So
when he posts a photo of a space heater, right?
Yes.
He posts a photo of a space heater on Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then you comment on that. This is a space heater that's in your home. And you comment on that. Really, babe? LOL, you're so happy.
Yes, because he was happy that he bought me heaters. He was happy that he could make my room warm because he knew that I'm working on getting my kids back. So he was excited that he could make me happy. That's what I'm trying to say. He's that person. He's just that type of person. He gets excited and happy about little things. He cries in a movie. Like, he's very sentimental. That's why I just don't understand how he went to prison for that many years. I don't understand how he did all those bad things because he has a very big heart. Like, he's not like that. If Clarissa wanted to get to know him, that would have been the best bet. Get to know him and know the real person he is. But like I said, I did what I was supposed to do. She said I could not be in a relationship with him. Yes, I still have feelings. There's still feelings there, but I had to put that aside.
So you're expecting us to believe that this is somehow different than when you broke up with, well, at the end of the 2019 case, when you got single and you left Mr. Longoria because he didn't complete services and the department wouldn't approve the kids being reunified with you with him in the home. You're expecting us to believe this is different.
No, ma'am. I left Juan Longoria because he came up dirty. He did drugs, and I told him not to do drugs again. That's why I left Mr. Longoria. It had nothing to do with what CPS wanted. I made that decision because I didn't want that around my kids when my kids come home. Because what if he's doing it then while my case is open? That means he doesn't care.
When did you let Mr. Longoria move back in your home after that?
He hasn't moved back in my home since then. He has not been with me a whole year. This is the longest I've ever been separated from Mr. Longoria. I literally left him for good. I left him for good, and I said, this is it. I'm done. I'm not forgiving you anymore. I'm not giving you any more chances because I gave him way too many chances to prove that he was going to stop doing drugs, period, and never touch him again. And so that's why I left Mr. Longoria.
Is it your testimony, Ms. Revino, that you did not know that there was a sexual relationship between Luciana and anyone else?
As in the little boy?
At the time of the removal, was that the first time you ever heard about her being in a sexual relationship?
She mentioned it after the CPS case was opened. She admitted to me that she slept with him when they went to the foster parents' house, which is the little boy. The little boy that she was talking to, he had a foster parent that he was adopted by, and she lived, I guess, in Houston or somewhere. And they went to like this beach thing or whatever. It was like during the summer or something. And they went to like this little place, like, you can rent those little houses or whatever on the beach. Well, they went over there, and she was supposed to be watching them. I told her, I was like, the only way she can go is if you're watching her all the time and she's not doing anything wrong and they're not doing anything they're not supposed to do. Well, come to find out, Luciana ended up sleeping with him when that woman went to sleep. So that's when she lost her virginity. And then she told me about it afterwards. And I cried and I was upset. And I told her, like, why would you do that? Because I tried putting her on birth control before that, because I told her, I said, I'm not giving you the right to sleep with anybody, and I'm not condoning it. I said, but if you do go and do something, I'll know that you're not going to come up pregnant if you do go behind my back. She said, Mom, I don't need birth control. She goes, I'm not planning on having sex. I don't want to do that. And then sure enough, she ended up having sex, and I didn't know about it. And then I found out, and that's whenever I told her, I was like, why did you do that? Like, you told me you weren't going to do that. And she's like, she even got mad at me the other day. She's like, oh, you're still not over it. And I said, well, of course I'm not over it, because you can't take that back. You can't get your virginity back. I said, I don't want you to end up like me. I straight up told her, I don't want you to end up like me. I don't want you to have 5 baby daddies and 5 kids. I want you to grow up and graduate and go to school, do what you got to do. Wait till you meet the right person. Try to get married. Do it the right way. Don't do the things I did, because I didn't do it right. And so that's that happened with that, so.
Okay, and similarly, it's your testimony today that when she was using drugs, you didn't know that either?
No, I did not.
Ms. Trevino, a few minutes ago, you said that you have never introduced Leroy to your children. Are you sure that's accurate?
And no, I'm saying like he's not around them like in visit wise and stuff like that. In the beginning,
Well, he's
when-
not allowed to be around them at the visits, right? He's not allowed there.
yes. In the beginning, before Clarissa said we couldn't be in a relationship, he used to go with me to the visits, but like just driving with me, like out of town and stuff like that. So, he saw them, he said hello to them and stuff like that, but he didn't like go inside to the visits and do the visit with us. Like he's not allowed to do that. But yes,
And
it was
he also came to family therapy, right?
yes, but it wasn't like in the therapy. He was just in the car waiting for me. But this
Well,
was
you introduced Lesiana to him. Harmony. You introduced Harmony to him, didn't you?
I mean, yes, I said who he was. I said, this is my son, Leroy. This is my daughter. Yes, of course I did. But it was never like every single time he saw them or he went in the visits with us. Like it was just me being polite and saying, hey, this is because my daughter was looking at me like, who's this? So I told her who it was.
Do you
So
understand why she might have questions about that?
Well, yes, I understand. And I explained it to her. She asked questions and I explained it to her what was going on and who he was and that we were just friends. Because in the beginning we were just friends. I was trying to get to know him and try to do the things the right way this time and not just jump right in. So that's what I was doing. But then they said we couldn't be in a relationship. So I just said, okay, never mind. Well, we're gonna have to stop. We can't be together in a relationship. We can only be friends. So
Okay, and why is it that your Facebook page says you're still in a relationship?
I just never changed it. I never changed it from the last time because I just didn't want anybody bothering me because people on Facebook take that. I've been getting a lot of fake profiles lately and friend requests. So
Do you know where Leroy lives?
do I know where he lives?
Do you know where he lives?
Yes. Why?
Do you know his address?
Not the address itself. No.
Is he with you right now?
No. Why?
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
All right, I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
This, Trevino, when I'm confused about the testimony you just provided. When did you stop your relationship with Mr. Longoria?
In 2021,
What time in 2021?
it was the week of Christmas.
Okay, so the children were removed in the summer of 2021, and you were in a relationship with him at that time.
Yes, when it happened. Yes.
Okay, and that was following the return of the children to you in the 2019 case, in which he did no services and made no progress with any of the concerns that he had in that case.
Oh no, in 2019, he did cooperate halfway, and then he stopped. Every time we'd break up, he would stop. But he did
Okay.
it together only.
Okay, but the children were returned to you in that
Yes.
case, not to you and Mr. Longoria. That was not a court order that allowed him to be around them.
Yes, ma'am. In 2020, when I got the kids back, in 2020, they were returned to both of us. He was living there at the time. And then we got this case in 2021. And that's whenever he was there for a little bit. We were together, living together for a few months. But then after that, I kicked him out and he was living with his sister. And then that's whenever they said that, well, that he couldn't be around or whatever because he wasn't doing the case. Like he wasn't in the case. He wasn't doing the services and stuff. So I said, okay, well, he's not living with me anyways. We're not together anymore. Like we broke up. So
Okay, so that was after this case specifically.
no,
You had
during
you had an ongoing relationship with Mr. Longoria following the 2019 case in which the children were returned to your care.
yes.
Okay, and your testimony to this court today is that the department did intentionally return the children to you and Mr. Longoria together. And that
Marie-
there was tacit approval from everyone involved that he be a caregiver for your children and be a part of your household at the time.
As in that, no, I'm saying he was able to be around the kids. He was living in the home when Maria brought my kids back. Maria and Mia from Casa, they returned my kids with me and Mr. Longoria living in the home in 2020 because I lived out on 3rd Road past the Grand. So he was living with me then. And they returned my kids back when he was there, knowing he was living there.
And how long did he have a drug problem?
Pretty much since I got in a relationship with him in 2019, off and on. So that's why this time around, when I had this case, I told him that he doesn't care about my kids and he doesn't care about his son, because if he did, then he would have never used. So I ended up finding out he was doing drugs again. So I told him that I was done, and I told him we're no longer together. For him to leave me alone, and I wasn't going to take him back this time. And I never did. I never went back. It's been over a year now.
So that was December of 2021, like 6 months into this existing case.
Yes.
And then when did you meet Leroy and start your relationship with him?
I met him in February of 2022, but we didn't start actually going into relationship until May, like in the middle of May. And then once Clarissa said I couldn't be with him, and that's stopped. I can't recall what month that was, but I know it was in 2022. I know it was probably like months after. I think it was about 6 months after we had been in a relationship. So May, August, September, October, November, December. No, about 4 or 5 months. I don't know. It was about 4 or 5 months probably. But yeah, she said that we couldn't be in a relationship. We could be friends. So that's where we went from there.
All right. Mr. Knight, additional questions for Ms. Trevino?
No further questions of Mr. Trevino, Your Honor.
All right, from anyone else? All right,
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Terry, at the time of removal, were you in custody?
No, sir.
Okay. And when did you go into custody this last time?
February 17th of 2022.
Okay. Now then, but I take it, and how long do you expect to be incarcerated?
2 more months.
All right, and you have, I mean, your child is Lesiana, is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Do you think, well, and according to prior testimony, basically you were incarcerated for about the first 5 years of her life, is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And who do you believe is responsible for your daughter being removed?
I think me and her mom have equal parts in that.
All righty. And do you agree that the placement she's in right now is a good placement?
Yes, sir, I do.
Do you want her to stay with your aunt?
If this child doesn't go good for me and her mom, yes.
I appreciate the fact that you're taking responsibility. Do you believe that by not being around, you couldn't stop the things that caused the removal this last time?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Pass the witness.
Okay, Ms. Morales, do you have questions for Mr. Terry?
Just a few. Mr. Terry, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can.
Okay. Okay. You heard Mr. Knight ask you if you would like for Lesiana to remain in the care of your aunt. And you're saying if this trial doesn't go your way, that's what you want. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You understand Lesiana is content where she's at and she's wanting to remain there. Do you understand that?
I thought that was different, but
Understand she's not wanting necessarily to be adopted, but she would like to remain in that placement. Do you understand that?
okay. Yes, ma'am. I understand.
Okay. Are you asking this court then to allow Lesiana to remain there, but not necessarily terminate your rights?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you're not able to work services while you're incarcerated, is that correct?
I'm not able to I guess go by the department's services, but I have been doing everything to like better myself as a person, and pretty much everything like right now as I'm speaking, I'm in a program as a condition of my parole for release that it basically has all the same things: parenting, cognitive intervention, drug prevention, and relapse courses and stuff like that. And I also volunteered myself, and I completed a 3-month course before coming to this program with all the same classes and stuff.
So, but Mr. Terry, you're able to take whatever courses and whatever programs are available there, but it's not necessarily something that would satisfy the department's family plan of service. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what is your plan? You're indicating that you might be released in the next couple of months. What is your plan after release?
To get a job, get back on my feet, stay sober, and be a more productive citizen.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Is there anything you would like this court to be made aware of today?
To be taken into consideration that I've never been in trouble with my kids, or like it's never been found that I've put them in any kind of danger except for by being not in their lives. So if that helps me, I would like that to be taken into consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay,
In the interest of judicial economy, I don't see a need to call the placements. I'm sure they would testify as to their intentions as CPS has related them, that they would like to keep and adopt the children in question. With that, the department would rest.
Mr. Tijerina, do you have a witness to call?
Your Honor, being that Mr. Reno was already called, unless there's anything else anybody wanted to ask of her, we have no further questions and no further witnesses.
Judge, I would call the placement.
Miss Regina Terry?
Yes, Your Honor. And how long have you been taking care of Lesiana?
We've been taking care of her for about 7.5 months now.
And how is she doing in your care?
She's doing good. Typical teenager.
I don't have teenagers, but I remember being one, so I believe you. Are you wanting this court to grant PMC or to allow you to adopt Lesiana, if possible?
Yes, ma'am. Whatever the situation is needed, we will help. We basically have said that Lesiana is at the age that adoption, we are for it. But truly, we're just here to really help her. We're not taking parents' places. We're her aunt and uncle and family. So we're taking care of her in that way to the best of her needs.
Thank you for correcting me on the pronunciation of her name, Lisiana. So are you receiving any sort of benefits at this time?
I believe there's some kind of kinship. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is it your understanding that if this case is resolved and you're given PMC, would you still be able to receive benefits at that time?
I believe so,
Okay.
but I really can't tell you because I really don't know. I think so. There's something there.
Okay. But so is it your testimony that Lisiana, due to her age and perhaps the relationship she has with her mom, is not really wanting to be adopted at this time?
I don't think I don't think so. I really don't.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Terry, just to clarify, is your position basically that you believe that Lisiana's safety and stability are most important and you're willing to provide that for her for as long as necessary?
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all I have. I'll pass the witness, Judge. No witnesses from me, Your Honor. I may have a slight housekeeping issue in that I'm not certain, since Harmony's letters did not come directly through me, I'm not certain whether the court received those handwritten letters or not, but if not, we do have them available for you.
And are they, if admitted, are they available to be sent to me? The other items that have been admitted, I have seen are they able to be forwarded?
Yes, Your Honor, I can forward
Okay.
them now.
All right. Are there any objections to the court admitting ad litem's exhibits A, B, and C?
Your Honor, the department has no objection.
No objection.
No objection.
All right, then petition, thank you. Ad litem's exhibits A, B, and C are admitted. And if you forward them to me, I can look at them. And then does that mean everyone rests and closes at this time?
Your Honor, I have a housekeeping matter.
All right. I think it's appropriate to consolidate those prior cases and
Yes, Your Honor, but we're also going to have to sever them out at the end of the hearing. But anyway, I
Yeah.
do believe it's proper to consolidate them at this time.
is there any objection to the court doing so? I think it's the appropriate course of action.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
No objection.
All right. I am ordering those cases consolidated, the prior case involving Harmony, then prior case involving Lisiana. And that way we have one court of continuing jurisdiction as to all four of these children. So thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Knight.
Having said that, Your Honor, I'd ask the court to take judicial notice of the contents of the court's file in B15-1064-CB-C. That is the original removal case in 2015. And also the contents of B19-1275-CB-A, the second removal in 2019. And of course, the instant cause number, the 2021 removal case.
All right, the court will do so at this time. So thank you, Mr. Knight. If you'll give me one moment, I'm going to just review. I got the letters that were referenced by Ms. Linscomb. If you'll give me one moment to read them. And if everyone has rested and closed, Mr. Knight, do you wish to address the court with a closing statement and argument?
Yes, Your Honor, I would. As a preface, I will state, Your Honor, that I have never been in a bench trial or a jury trial requesting termination of parental rights where the parents did not argue and say that they love their children. However, love is more than a word. Basically, it's a decision and a commitment to put the best interest of the child before the interest of the parent when they are in conflict. And In regards to Ms. Trevino, she has an extensive history of CPS. By my count, approximately 13 years. Is it possible that she would never have a problem regarding the care and custody of her children again? Yes. Is it probable? Absolutely not. If nothing else, picking up a 2009 conviction, well, actually 3 convictions for deliberate, for giving marijuana to a child, endangering a child, and then still continue using marijuana throughout the following cases. In regards to Ms. Trevino, Your Honor, I believe that by her actions, the evidence to show that she has knowingly placed or allowed the children to remain in conditions or surrounding which endangered their physical or emotional well-being of the children. That would be 15.1.4. And furthermore, that she engaged in conduct or knowingly placed the children with persons who engaged in conduct which endangered the physical or emotional well-being of the children. That's say 15.1.5 via drug use, via family violence. We have Lesiana being struck. We have her seeing her mother being assaulted by her boyfriend. We have little Eddie ingesting methamphetamines. The list, goes on and on. And I believe the conviction satisfies section 22.0, endangering the child also satisfies 15.1.11. The department has said that she is in compliance with her family plan of service. I appreciate the department giving her that much credit. I would submit to you that if you take the totality of the circumstances, the totality of the facts into consideration, that she is not, because if she truly was, we wouldn't even be asking for termination. I also believe that based upon the testimony, that's in the best interest of the children that her parental rights be terminated so that they can achieve a stable lifestyle, a safe home, a drug-free home, a family violence-free home, because that's what these children have been subjected to for most of their lives. And being removed and having to change placement, that's a form of abuse themselves. And the reason that has occurred is simply because of the choices that Ms. Trevino has made. And unfortunately, those choices she made have routinely not been good for her children. And based on her prior history, we cannot have a reasonable expectation that will change. Moving on to the next father, that is to say, Mr. Terry. Mr. Terry does not have a relationship with his child. By the mother's testimony, he was gone for the first 5 years because he got himself locked up. I would submit to you his continuous criminal conduct, which he has a lot of criminal history, felony-wise, is conduct which endangers or knowingly placed his child with persons who engage in conduct with endanger the physical and emotional well-being. That's 17.1.5, because he's not around. He's not around to help. He's not around to protect. And it also runs afoul of 17.1.4. He's knowingly placed or allowed the child to remain in conditions or surroundings which endangered that child's physical or emotional well-being. And to his credit, and I applaud him for this, he took responsibility. But the thing about it is, he has a lot of history behind himself. He's obviously, he said, I couldn't work my plan of service because I was locked up. Well, his conduct, which he voluntarily undertook, took him out of his child's life for the first 5 years, took him out of his child's life where he couldn't work the family plan of service and even have a potential to recover his child. So he's in non-compliance with the family plan of service. He's also, it's arguable that he's in violation of 17.1.15, failure to comply with the provision of the court order. 17.1.17, knowingly engaged in criminal conduct which which basically took him, well, I take that back. That's from the filing of the petition. But anyway, it's without question, it's in the child's best interest that his parental rights be terminated because he hasn't been around. He hasn't been protective in any sense of the word, and has failed to bond with the child because he's just not around. In regards to Mr. Gonzalez, again, this is an individual that knowingly placed or knowingly allowed the child to remain in conditions surrounding which endangered the child's physical and emotional well-being. That is to say, being with the mother, and he engaged in conduct which knowingly placed the child in danger of endanger the child's physical or emotional well-being. We have drug use, we have family violence. He's not going to work his family plan of service. He's not going to be there when the child needs him. The best interests are without question. Again, moving on, and it is a pattern because that is a pattern of Miss Trevino. She makes very poor choices with men, and it doesn't make any difference how those choices affect her children. Mr. Gomez, again, it was when Mr. Gomez's watch, and when little Eddie gets a hold of meth. I mean, how many babies ingest meth and have to be halo-fighted for medical care? Again, you've got meth use, family violence. So, without question, he knowingly placed or knowingly allowed the child to remain in conditions or surrounding which endanger the child's physical or emotional well-being. He engaged in conduct or knowingly placed the child with persons who engaged in conduct which endanger the child's physical or emotional well-being. No effort to comply with the family plan of service, and basically best interest, no question. He doesn't have, he can't point to anything that he's done to further the best interest of his child, and there's no indication, there's no reason to believe that would ever change. Then we have Mr. Longoria, the last father, and it's basically the same grounds. He's knowingly allowed the child to remain in conditions or surroundings or engaged in conduct which endangered the child's physical or emotional well-being. He hasn't worked his family plan of service. He's not present today. And he hasn't done anything that shows that he cares enough about his child to really do anything. And children have got to have someone that cares enough to be around and to make good decisions on their behalf. I submit to you that Ms. Trevino, I understand she loves her children, but to her actions say something different. And those have been actions day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And there's no reasonable expectations that that's going to change. The fathers, unfortunately, are cut from the same cloth, and they're making the same bad decisions that Mr. Trevino has made. And so therefore, we believe that termination is proper under the family code, and it's also in the children's best interest. Thank you.
Mr. Knight, thank you. Mr. Tijerina.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would argue that under the 2021 changes to the law and the family code, that B&E are not clear and convincing met today under the 161.001 laundry list. I would say that saying we're proving the D&E grounds with not much more than scintilla evidence of what happened and using the past to get there. The facts that we have in the affidavit today, she has addressed those. It was said that she's addressed the discipline, she's addressed the removal of Mr. Longoria from the home. Now, whether she continued to see him through December of 2021 is a little different. That was something I wasn't part of the case for. I didn't come on until February, March last year. But one of those things I could have easily tried to address prior counsel might not have completely known, but I think this whole thing is about growth, and the things that she's doing now, the acknowledgments of poor choices in men and relationships. Even this court had directly called her out, say, stop picking. The word loser was used in some effect, and she got the memo. Yes, it was after the extension in July, but ultimately, I don't think the right message to send is that people are not capable of change, even if it comes late in the game. I don't believe that we should terminate rights without giving her the chance to demonstrate with the children outside of a one-room office at the department what she can and can't do to parent. At the very least, Your Honor, I think the best thing you did was ordering the counseling, but originally CPS tried to limit it to just the one, and then they told her it was about termination. So her notes are just about, hey, let's address termination. Thankfully, at the December hearing, you addressed that we should continue them. We got at least 2 or 3 more in. There's progress, but that never came up in 3 cases before. And I asked Tabitha, I was like, why did no attorneys or anybody else family counseling to address these issues? So that was one of the things I did to try to change hearts and minds in this case, was something new. To say that someone's history is the indicator that they cannot change and that they're going to do the same thing, I don't think that that's what the legislative intent of our family code is just say, if you do it once, you're always going to do it. It's just people change. And marijuana is no longer the reason for a valid removal by itself anyway. So I understand the CBD testing as marijuana, that she's gotten to clean negative. She's pure negative, non-dilute UAs lately. I think that there are other alternatives to PMC or to termination, such as PMC, for especially Lesiana, who did not seem to either want to be terminated or adopted. Understandably, Harmony has a lot of issues to work through. We would ask that her and her mother be allowed to continue the counseling. I think the suggestion, if the termination didn't happen, the counselor gave as an alternative of phasing the kids in one at a time might be a valid path to take. But alternatively, she says she has the home and is willing to take all 4 back. Nobody should have even considered it would just be a dismissal today. I would have always suggested a return and monitor were it possible. The speculation of is she not, is she in a relationship, is she not? A lot of this is speculation. Facebook posts, undated, unverified, 30 minutes before the hearing. I think she testified under oath. She's not, yes, she's still affectionate. They had an intimate relationship. How could she not be? But she came into court and he said the same thing. He will not be the reason she doesn't get her kids back. So he stood aside. So Tabitha Trevino addressed the concerns of this removal affidavit. We can't go back in the time machine and change what happened before. You can be prospective and move forward with what you have now. And she doesn't have prior terminations. One of the children was severed out beforehand. Poor choices in men is not a termination ground. She's learning, she's trying. Her therapist says where she didn't take responsibility before, she is now. These are new developments. People can adapt. Parent-child relationships do not need to be terminated in order for the children to remain where they are. PMC is an option. PMC to the department is an option. PMC to the caretaker for Lesiana is an option. There are other options. And she just wants to learn and demonstrate that she's got a better parenting set of skills now. So our request would be to not terminate the parental rights of Ms. Trevino and consider alternatives that allow for either a return or PMC to allow more time for counseling to get the children ready to consider reunification.
Thank you, Mr. Tiarina.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, I'd like to point out that it seems like there was not a whole lot of evidence put on today about my client. The initial allegations that started this case of There was some sexual abuse, physical abuse allegation, things like that. And none of those involved my client, Mr. Gomez. It's certainly true that my client has done very little in this case. He hasn't completed his service plan, but that's just one of the prongs. And the department has not proven that it's in the best interest of young Eddie to terminate my client's parental rights. My client was named temporary possessory conservator, and the evidence shows that my client never interfered with the custody in this case. This case has been going on a long time. He never even attempted to interfere with the custody of his child in this case. And he never impinged upon the permanence of young Eddie's placement. There's zero evidence to show that he would start doing that now. And therefore, terminating my client's parental rights would not change anything. If it doesn't change anything, it cannot be proven that it's in the best interest of the child to terminate my client's rights. There's been no evidence that my client has committed crimes against his child or anything like that. And again, the question is about terminating my client's rights to this child. It's not about other things or what else he may or may not have done. Young Eddie has not said that he wants his father's rights terminated. Again, there's a real dearth of evidence of much of anything regarding my client. And if that's the case, I don't see how the best interest prong can be satisfied. If he's been named temporary possessory conservator for, I don't know, almost 2 years now, a year and a half, naming him possessory conservator going forward will not change anything. And therefore, I think the more severe, I'll call it a sanction, and technically perhaps it's not, but the more severe sanction of terminating a parent's rights is not appropriate in this case, in my opinion, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Bunch. Ms. Morales.
Thank you, Judge. I take the position that I have very seriously, whether I represent a parent or a child. And in this case, in representing Mr. Terry, his daughter is 14 years old and by all accounts does not want to be adopted. And whether I represent a child or a parent, I feel very strongly that if we have a child who is old enough to express their desire and does not want to be adopted, then I don't believe it's in their best interest to terminate parental rights. I understand in their hearts they will always have their parents, but in my mind, I don't want to leave a child without a legal parent, knowing full well that they do not want to be adopted or don't desire to be adopted. And that's the case that we have here. She's doing well in her current placement. Her aunt is willing to take care of her and to continue to be her aunt, to be her family, to be her support system. I don't see that terminating Mr. Terry's rights is going to benefit Lisiana in any way. If anything, there are other options available to the court, PMC, and the court can order support for Lisiana, can make orders as to contact that the court feels are appropriate, whether it's any contact or no contact. But in this case, I just don't believe that it's in her best interest to terminate us to dad, knowing that there are no future plans of adoption for her. So I would ask this court to consider PMC and order any contact that the court feels is appropriate or no contact if the court feels that's appropriate. Thank you.
Your Honor, we've heard a lot of testimony about Mr. Longoria's past, but we've also heard a lot of testimony about what he has been doing to work on himself. We've heard testimony that he's completed his parenting class We've also heard testimony that he's completed individual counseling. We've heard testimony that he has a steady job and he's been working and has an appropriate home to live. So we see that Mr. Longoria has been working very, very hard on himself over the course of this case. And even on top of that, we've heard that Mr. Longoria successfully completed his parole. So we're seeing that Mr. Longoria is turning away from the life that he was living for years, and now he's really been working on himself and improving himself. And even before this case started, we've heard testimony that Mr. Longoria was an active father. He was in Jonah's life. So given all the progress that we have here, I don't believe that termination is appropriate in this case, especially when we have placement for Jonah that's willing to care for Jonah for as long as it takes, even without adopting Jonah. So I would ask for Jonah's placement to BPMC as Mr. Longoria continues to work on himself and continues to make further progress and improvements that we have seen him make throughout the course of this case. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Asari. And Ms. Linscomb.
Thank you, Your Honor. Judge, as to the fathers in this case, in my estimation, they've all effectively abandoned their respective children. It seems the pattern is once they're no longer actively in a relationship with Ms. Trevino, they're no longer actively involved with their children, or any activity with their children dies off very shortly after the relationship does. That seems to be the pattern over the years, and I believe that to be the case today. I think, Your Honor, in order for me to really address all of the children's wants and desires, I have to bifurcate Lisiana from the other children in that she is the only child who has verbalized a desire to return home to mom consistently, and a request that, as best she can understand, parental rights not be terminated as to her mother, so that she can continue to have a relationship with her. As has been alluded to by other parties, Your Honor, including Ms. Trevino herself, there is a cyclical or generational nature to a lot of the issues going on in this family. While that is true, and we can have some empathy and understanding for Ms. Trevino and the way she learned to parent by modeling what she herself acknowledges to be poor parenting. We can have those feelings while still acknowledging that it's our responsibility to ensure that this pattern stops, that the cycle does not continue on. And in this family, the problem I have in recommending anything other than termination today is that I myself have personally been in this very seat making similar arguments twice before now. 2 full conservatorship cases went along in both 2015 and 2019. And as we sit here today, knowing some of the problems in the family have been consistently family violence, drug issues, poor supervision, obviously drug use, some inappropriate sexual activity or abuse has been alleged. My concern is that now some of the bad patterns Ms. Trevino has found herself in are already starting to trickle down to the children. Namely, we have at least one child who is confirmed to have been in a sexually inappropriate relationship, and at least 2 children who've ingested drugs, either intentionally or unintentionally. So at least 2 of our primary issues in this family have already bled down to the next generation that's here before the court today. That gives me strong concerns about what our next removal fact pattern might be in the event that the court doesn't terminate this relationship today. At this point, I don't believe we really need to do much conjecture in our minds to know that we will all end up back here at some point if this relationship is not terminated. With regard, Your Honor, to the 3 youngest children, and when we consider the frequency of CPS involvement in their lives, I don't find it likely that we won't have another removal when we consider that we still have almost 8 years between now and when Harmony emancipates. We have almost 13 years between now and when Eddie emancipates, and we have almost 16 years between now and when Jonah emancipates. And frankly, Your Honor, when we consider termination and we're talking about best interest, the code gives us the Holly factors to turn to. And while I understand that it's frustrating for some people to say, hey, all you're doing is judging my past, but look at me today. Well, one of the Holly factors is the frequency and longevity of placements outside the home. We have had 3 removals of these children, and even the 2 FBSS cases that went on prior to those 3 removals were 8 and 9 months in duration, respectively. So it's not an exaggeration at all to say that these children have been so heavily and frequently involved with the department that some of them have literally had more than half their lives involved in a CPS case, more time with foster parents and other family members than with their mother herself. I think for a 14-year-old to have had 16 placements in her life is staggering. And Your Honor, with regard to her growth and Ms. Trevino's progress, while I commend her for completing services, she has always completed services. And the court knows that because we have testimony from the department itself that she has successfully completed 230 hours worth of services provided by the department to benefit her and her relationship with and care of the children. But we come into court today, and despite the court being what I consider to be crystal clear about the court's opinion as to her instability in relationships with men and the children having stress and anxiety about the various men being brought into the home and her relationships with them, and the inappropriateness of her needing to come and ask the court's permission to date a felon who was incarcerated for 20 years for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. That's problematic enough, Judge, but then to come here today and insult the court by expecting you to believe that despite her continuing to post photos with him and heart emojis and using terms of endearment like babe and all of these posts that occurred between November 12th and today's date, all the way up until this morning where he's posting about her big day in court and getting the children back home. I think that's insulting to the court, Judge, and I think it shows a further inability and just flat out refusal at this point to really have any demonstrable change in behavior or outlook. And finally, Your Honor, I think I will agree with Ms. Trevino that maybe she has done her best, but I would submit to the court that her best is not good enough, and these kids deserve better. So as to Lisiana, Judge, I can only tell the court that she wishes to return home to mom and that she has no desire to be adopted. As for the other 3, I would ask the court to terminate parental rights for the reasons the department stated with regard to grounds. Of course, find that's in their best interest and continue their current placements as they exist today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Linscomb, Mr. Knight, you have a
Further-
response?
Your Honor, in my experience regarding the wishes of the children, is children, even from the most abusive of circumstances, love their parents. And the only way that we can guarantee that these children will have a safe, stable, drug-free family violence home is to terminate parental rights. Regarding the fathers, the only one that has cared enough to even be present is Mr. Terry. And council can talk about their respective dads, but pretty is pretty does. And failing to work the family plan of service is one indication of intent, will, desire. Failing to show up for court is another. We just ask the court to enter such orders that it deems appropriate and in the best interest of the respective children and their parents. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you all. At this time, based on the testimony that the court has heard today and at our original trial setting, and after reviewing the exhibits that have been entered into evidence and reviewing the contents of the court's file, the court at this time does find by clear and convincing evidence that Miss Tabitha Trevino knowingly placed or knowingly allowed the children to remain in conditions or surroundings which endanger the physical or emotional well-being of the children pursuant to section 161.001B1D of the Texas Family Code, and that she engaged in conduct or knowingly placed the children with persons who engaged in conduct which endangers the physical or emotional well-being of the children pursuant to section 161.001B1E of the Texas Family Code. The court further finds by clear and convincing evidence the termination of the parent-child relationship that exists between Tabitha Trevino and the children Luciano, Harmony, Eduardo Gomez, and Jonah Longoria is in the best interest of the children. Court also finds by clear and convincing evidence that Mr. Aaron Terry has engaged in conduct or knowingly placed the child with persons who engaged in conduct which endangers the physical or emotional well-being of the child pursuant to section 161.001B1E of the Texas Family Code, that he has constructively abandoned the child who has been in the temporary managing conservatorship of the department for not less than 6 months, and the department made reasonable efforts to return the child to the father. Father has not regularly visited or maintained significant contact with the child, and the father has demonstrated an inability to provide the child with a safe environment pursuant to section 161.001B1N of the Texas Family Code, and that he failed to comply with the provisions of a court order that specifically established the actions necessary for the father to obtain the return of the child who has been in the temporary managing conservatorship of the department for not less than 9 months as a result of the child's removal from the parent under Chapter 262 for the abuse or neglect of the child pursuant to section 161.001B10 of the Texas Family Code. Termination of the parent-child relationship that exists between Aaron Terry and the child Luciana is in the best interest of the child. Court similarly finds by clear and convincing evidence that Mr. Jesus Gonzalez has constructively abandoned the child who has been in the temporary managing conservatorship of the Department of Family and Protective Services for not less than 6 months, and the department has made reasonable efforts to return the child to the father. Father has not regularly or visited or maintained significant contact with the child, and the father has demonstrated an inability to provide the child with a safe environment pursuant to section 161.001B1N of the Texas Family Code. The court also finds that he failed to comply with the provisions of a court order that specifically established the actions necessary for the father to obtain the return of the child who has been in the temporary managing conservatorship of the department for not less than 9 months as a result of the child's removal from the parent under Chapter 262 for the abuse or neglect of the child pursuant to section 161.001B10 of the Texas Family Code. Court further finds by clear and convincing evidence the termination of the parent-child relationship that exists between Jesus Gonzalez and the child Harmony is in the best interest of the child. Court also finds by clear and convincing evidence that Mr. Eduardo Jose Gomez has constructively abandoned the child who has been in the temporary managing conservatorship of the Department of Family and Protective Services for not less than 6 months. And the department has made reasonable efforts to return the child to the father. The father has not regularly visited or maintained significant contact with the child, and the father has demonstrated an inability to provide the child with a safe environment pursuant to section 161.001B1N of the Texas Family Code, and that he failed to comply with the provisions of a court order which specifically established the actions necessary for the father to obtain the return of the child who has been in the temporary managing conservatorship of the department for not less than 9 months as a result of the child's removal from the parent under Chapter 262 for the abuse or neglect of the child pursuant to section 161.001B10 of the Texas Family Code. Court further finds by clear and convincing evidence that termination of the parent-child relationship that exists between Eduardo Jose Gomez and the child Eduardo Gomez is in the best interest of the child. And the court also finds by clear and convincing evidence that Mr. Juan Anthony Longoria has constructively abandoned the child who has been in the temporary managing conservatorship of the department for not less than 6 months. The department has made reasonable efforts to return the child to the father. Father has not regularly visited or maintained significant contact with the child, and the father has demonstrated an inability to provide the child with a safe environment pursuant to section 161.001B1N of the Texas Family Code. That he failed to comply with the provisions of a court order that specifically established the actions necessary for the father to obtain the return of the child who has been in the temporary managing conservatorship of the Department of Family and Protective Services for not less than 9 months as a result of the child's removal from the parent under Chapter 262 for the abuse or neglect of the child pursuant to section 161.001B10 of the Texas Family Code. Court further finds by clear and convincing evidence the termination of the parent-child relationship that exists between Juan Anthony Longoria Jr. and the child Jonah is in the best interest of the child. The court further finds by a preponderance of the evidence that it is in the best interest of all the children in this suit for the department to be appointed permanent managing conservator at this time and for their current individual placements to continue. The court at this time finds that doing so is in their best interest, that each of their placements is meeting their physical, emotional, and educational and developmental needs. And in the case of Eduardo Gomez, his special needs as well. The court at this time does recognize and have heard today that Lisiana does not immediately wish to be adopted, but this court feels that and wants to emphasize that in reaching the best interest findings as it relates to her specifically, that having the parental rights terminated does not preclude this court from ultimately transferring conservatorship to a family member like Miss Regina Terry, but it opens the option for her if that opinion were to change and if she would want that to happen for her future. She's 14 years old and she has the ability to make that determination if she wishes. But it does not preclude us from seeking other options. But the court does feel at this time that the evidence that was presented justified the court's termination of parental rights in the way of the conduct of the parents and of what's in her best interest. So I wanted to emphasize that. I also wanted to emphasize that the court specifically approves of the permanency goals of adoption by the individuals listed based on the testimony heard today and approves of those permanency goals moving forward, and found that those options for permanency very compelling reasons to find that termination is in the best interest of the children as well. And also in reaching the findings of the court today, court wants the record to note that as the fact finder and the individual with the task of judging the credibility of the witnesses before this court, that the court found Ms. Tabitha Trevino's testimony self-serving and lacking credibility. I did not hear the accountability or responsibility that she indicated that she has reached in terms of working the services that have been offered in this case or any other. And I heard many excuses today for each and every allegation that was raised, that she had either abused or neglected her children in the past, in the distant past and the recent past. And that was also a compelling reason for the court to come to the conclusions, the findings and orders of this court today. At this time, the court is grateful for the services that each of the appointed counsel for parents have provided their clients in this case. I thank you for your work on their behalf and for them and for this court. And I will dismiss you from those appointments at this time. I will continue Ms. Linscomb as the attorney and guardian ad litem for the children until we've achieved permanency for them, either through a modification of the final order and transfer of conservatorship or a adoption, which I am ordering the department to begin to prepare the case for those permanency goals. I thank you all. I understand that this was a difficult case. I sat today with an open mind to the evidence and but feel strongly that the orders that have been entered are in the individual best interests of each of these children. So I thank you all, and I will let you know that we will be back for a permanency review after final order on April the 11th at 3:30 in the afternoon. All right, Mr. Tiarina.
Point to address, because Ms. Trevino had to her therapist and multiple others indicated her intent to have a appeal if it went in adverse. I did file the motion to substitute. I didn't know if you just missing does that automatically, but just however.
Well, I will work on if you can, as your last act as her attorney during this proceeding, if you can file the notice of appeal, if that is if you've conferred with her and that's what she wishes to do, it is my request that you do that, and then I can act in response to that and to substitute if you do not want to handle it. So that's what I would ask to do if that's the route you wish to take.
I did file a notice to substitute because there is no final signed order today, and I wanted to be prompt to make sure that whoever does take over, which would ideally not be me.
Right. Well, what I want you to do when we have the order is if you can file the notice of appeal, you are her attorney of record, and you can do that and request the substitution. But I think they have to be filed in that order. So I've got your substitution request, but we need the notice of appeal. I don't have anything to substitute you for until that's filed. It
Excuse me,
is,
Your Honor.
yes,
This
Mr. Chair.
I would like to ask my lawyer also that I would like to file a notice of appeal also, please. But I have no way to contact her from here.
All right, well, she's here and she knows what to do then. Thank you.
Okay.
If not, thank you all. All parties are excused.